Welcome to Real Time Review. I'm your host, Jesse Nussman. With me again, fellow Atlanta film critic Jason Evans. Jason, this episode, this week, it's really feeling like it's 1986 at the box
like
office.
That, yes.
The Ghostbusters are back. There's a Roadhouse remake, although we've had some discussion about maybe that's a 90s movie, but who cares? It's Gen X nostalgia month, and that means you're not only filling in as a fellow film critic, but our chief Gen X
representing
expert.
people in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
It's not our finest hour, I think.
So the big one that we're going to be talking about is the new Ghostbusters movie, Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire.
We're going to need all the help we can get.
Let's get to work.
It's all dark and horny at 12 o'clock.
I think maybe...
By the way, why not just do Ghostbusters 2, 3, 4? Frozen Empire doesn't mean anything. It doesn't.
Because it's the Empire State is literally frozen in the movie, Jason. So in the spirit of great producing, I'm going to kick us off with a bit of a spicy segment here, which is, can you explain Ghostbusters to me? Like, why do people like Ghostbusters?
I think the original was very, very funny. It had a very unique concept. I mean, the notion of treating ghosts as a scientific kind of thing,
but like beyond the first movie, because like I will concede,
first movie's wonderful.
The first movie, one of the great comedies of the 1980s, one of the great American comedies, but like I have never understood why the desire to make this like a franchise or something like that. Does that make sense?
I don't think it's going to come as a surprise. The desire is called money. The first movie made a ton of money, and people clearly were like, yes, let me see more of these funny characters. The way they interact with each other is really amusing. And there was a spin-off cartoon show, and they made more movies. And then here we are 30 plus years later, and someone said, we should be doing some more of this. I mean, Hollywood loves franchises. Is this new to you, Jesse?
It's not new to me. It just sort of strikes me as so strange because, like, when I think back to the first one, like, the thing I remember about it is it's kind of just like a hangout movie. Like, the mythology of the ghosts and all the equipment and stuff is, like, less important than just sort of, like, it's the chemistry of all of these guys. And sitting through this most recent one last night, I couldn't help but thinking, like, why are these movies so serious now? It really feels like these movies are
almost like trying to be a horror movie at times. Like,
it really feels invested in like the we need to get into the mythology of Ghostbusters and of like we need you to understand the power, the responsibility of being a Ghostbuster. And it's like this is a series that it was like fart jokes in the 80s. The idea that this is something that we're holding so sacred is so strange to me.
Well, and the other thing was, one of the things that I loved about the movies in the 1980s was in the midst of them fighting the ghosts, you know, the big battles and things like that, Bill Murray especially would be cracking jokes left and right. Like, they weren't taking the situation super seriously, and so we as an audience could laugh alongside them, and that really doesn't happen at all in these movies. I think you mentioned the camaraderie and hanging out. One of the problems I think with this film is that I can't even count how many characters there are in it.
It's really
like
trying to do like
3
generations of people all coming together.
Yeah, they're like a dozen different characters, and most of them have nothing to do, but they still need to have some time on screen. And as a result, I think the movie really suffers. There are a couple performances and a couple characters I really liked. I love McKenna Grace.
She's good. Very talented child actress.
Yes, and she is one of my favorite young actresses out there. I think her character is really the heart of the movie, and if there is going to be like a teen angst kind of thing happening, I absolutely approve of her being the person who's doing it, and I think that's one of the stronger parts of this movie. Kumail Nanjiani is in it, and he is the comic relief.
I mean, Kumail Nanjiani and like Paul Rudd is in this movie. Paul Rudd's someone who like, if we were going to recast Ghostbusters today, like Paul Rudd has like the perfect energy to you know fit into that world.
Exactly, but like I think Kumail Nanjiani is way funnier in this movie and has a way more interesting character to some extent than Paul Rudd does.
Right, who's just kind of there and like doesn't. It's not really clear like where he fits into this whole.
Well, and in fact, the film, it's like his storyline is mostly about he doesn't know where he fits. And then, of course, they have the classic. Ernie Hudson is back. Dan Aykroyd is back. Bill Murray is back. Although, don't be fooled, Bill Murray is like in 2 scenes.
Bill Murray is barely in, and most of the. I thought it was notable how like one of his appearances in the movie, he literally like goes for like a Scotch bottle model as almost like Bill Murray notoriously has been very reluctant to come back to this franchise.
I think he's doing a favor to his old friends.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'll appear, but you've got 3 days. Figure out what I can do in 3 days on the set.
As opposed to, like, Dan Aykroyd is, like, chewing up the scenery, and Dan Aykroyd has, like, for decades been kind of the steward of this series, and, like, he's the one that's, like, all into, like, if you see interviews with him, like, the paranormal and aliens and stuff. And so, like, part of his scenes feel like a little bit of, like... And part of this series being taken gradually more seriously feels like Aykroyd sort of like, I take this seriously, and this is, like, quote, important, but I think we've lost some of the kind of, like, loose fun of that first movie. Even in Ghostbusters 2, I feel like that movie is taking the mythology and stuff a little bit more seriously, or everyone feels a little bit more tired in that movie.
Look, I want to be clear about something. This is not a terrible film. We're doing a lot of, in my opinion, we're doing a lot of bashing of it. I think it's still, I wasn't bored. I thought the pacing was fairly decent. There were a number of laughs, mostly around Kumail Nanjiani, and I think a lot of it exists for fan service. I mean, like, there's a scene in the New York Public Library, a couple scenes in the New York Public Library that are almost ripped exactly out of the original scenes. There's a piece of me that sort of goes, well, wait, if I want to see the ghost in the New York Public Library, we did it as well as it can be done in the very first film.
So does this nostalgia work for you? Because I'm obviously someone that, like, I don't quite have that same nostalgia, and so, like, for me, sitting through this whole movie, I sort of felt this, like, sinking depression of just sort of like, oh my gosh, this is like what our popular culture has come to, is to just like, I want to pat myself on the back for like knowing the things that I recognize from my childhood. But
yeah, so I would say that the nostalgia both worked and it didn't. There were a couple times where they did stuff and I laughed, I was amused, oh, they brought that character back. But for the most part, especially when they're doing it relentlessly throughout the film, I was like, okay, I get that you're doing fan service again and again and again. You have sacrificed story. You've sacrificed, frankly, character development. Although, like I said, there are a dozen characters, so maybe pick 4 or something like that would be better. But you sacrifice these things so you can give me fan service after fan service. And I just don't. I don't feel like people who aren't currently big like if you're excited for this film, if you're a big Ghostbusters fan, I guess it delivers what you would expect from a Ghostbusters film.
If what you're wanting for this movie is just to have like all of these sort of items and references kind of do a little parade across the screen and reveal themselves to you, like, I guess it's satisfying, but maybe part of my crisis is like, is that really like all we want at this point?
My bottom line is no one who isn't super excited for this film is really going to enjoy it, I think. Mm-hmm. If you're a fan of the franchise and you're like, oh, I want to be reminded of these things that were so great, it reminds you of them. It doesn't improve on them in any way. It doesn't do anything even remotely new. In fact, I think the plot is almost exactly the same as one of the other movies.
All of these movies are the same thing over and over again. Yeah. They all somehow follow the same like beats of that first original
but I mean,
movie.
even like, oh, there's a bad guy who wants to take over the world with a bunch of ghosts. Like, haven't we done that, I think, 3 times already or something like that? In any event, we don't need to spend much more time on it. If you're a big fan, you'll probably get what you want, but if you're not like dying to see this, then I can't recommend it.
So let's transition to a new segment we're going to work out called Quick Time Review, where there's a bunch of other movies coming out this week.
Actually, wait, we said we were going to call it
Real-time
Quick Time or something like that.
We'll get it. We'll do a theme song. We'll have a band come out one of these days.
Yeah.
So basically, we're going to go back and forth, and for a minute each, we're
1
going to
minute.
try.
In fact, I have my phone.
You're
I have my timer.
this.
I am going to time this. We have exactly 1 minute on each one of these.
Okay.
No going over.
No going over. So I guess, should I start off and try and tell you about the other piece of 80s pop culture that is entering
I think that makes the most sense.
Sphere?
I'm going to say go, and you're going to have 1 minute to tell us about Roadhouse.
Roadhouse.
Go.
So remake of the Patrick Swayze, like, pretty fun trash movie from the 80s. This new version stars Jake Gyllenhaal. And I think all I can really tell you, Jason, is this is a B movie that does not understand it's a B movie and is trying at every point to elevate itself, whether it be in kind of these crazy stitched together CGI camera movements or let's give Jake Gyllenhaal's character a traumatic backstory because that's really what everyone needs. And instead you get something that like is trying to be something that it's not, and it kind of sucks some of that kind of pulpy fun you get out of watching kind of like a great like cheesy kind of trashy piece of pop IP, if that makes sense.
Wow, you did that in 45 seconds. I'm very impressed.
Do I have enough time to talk about Conor McGregor
Go for it. You
having maybe
10 seconds
the
left.
worst acting performance I've ever seen in a movie in the last couple years? It sounds like he's doing his entire performance phonically and like does not understand what is coming out of his mouth.
The alarm just went off, so
Wow.
you're all done. Well done in 1 minute. I want to ask you, does it follow like the same storyline? Because I mean, like, is it a remake? Is it a sequel? I mean,
it's basically the same thing. I mean, if no one's ever seen Roadhouse, like, it's basically Patrick Swayze is like the roughest, toughest bouncer in all of the land, and comes in to like, clean up this bar where people are getting into too many fights, and then he gets in trouble with like the local drug lords and stuff. It's basically the same thing, only now we've moved it to the Florida Keys, so there's like beautiful sunsets and palm trees swaying in the distance, and Jake Gyllenhaal wearing a lot of, short sleeve button-ups.
but the bottom line is, you're telling me there's a reason this is on streaming and not in theaters.
Yes, 100%.
All right, my turn. I'm going to have 1 minute. I'm going to talk about a film called One Life. This stars Anthony Hopkins. This is a Holocaust film. It's been in theaters for about a week. I cannot recommend this more highly. It's the story of a man named Nicholas Winton, who in the 1930s, as a young man, was in Czechoslovakia. He saw a bunch of children that he realized were going to be taken by the Nazis, and he organizes trains to move them from Czechoslovakia to foster families in England. He ends up saving hundreds of children. This is really like the British Oscar Schindler. And Anthony Hopkins plays him as an old man. For 50 plus years, sort of no one knew the story of what he had done. And it is only very much later in life that people discover what happened with Nicholas Winton. The story is incredibly moving. There's not a dry eye in the house at the end of it. It's a really beautiful telling of two different time periods. I can't recommend it more highly. It's a tremendously fun way to learn about some important history.
This was at the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival, correct?
It was. By the way, my minute just went up, so I'm right on time.
Good job. Yes. I don't have any funny questions about this.
No. And there shouldn't be any funny questions about it. It's an outstanding piece of filmmaking. It's great to see Anthony Hopkins still doing what he has done for years and years and years.
One of our most trusted, just steady hands.
Yeah,
you put him in anything and he's good.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a film that hasn't gotten enough attention. And like I said, I sat in a theater that was full, and not a single person wasn't sobbing at the very end of this film. It's really a beautiful movie.
Okay, I can't wait to check it out because I've heard you talking about it for weeks.
All
Okay.
right, your turn. You have 1 minute. What film are you going to tell us about?
We're going to talk about Love Lies Bleeding, the everyone's favorite lesbian romance revenge thriller that's out in theaters now. That's also set in the 1980s, Jason. So we're really tying this 80s theme together. Although this is kind of like the deep fried, dingy version of 1980s. It is basically like I said, this romance revenge thriller stars Kristen Stewart and an actress named Katie O'Brien, who she was on The Mandalorian for a little bit. Basically, these two women, they fall in love, they get mixed up in this seedy world of gun runners and underground bodybuilders and kind of like the dark underbelly of Albuquerque, New Mexico in the 1980s. And it is
is Breaking Bad? Is it same time as Breaking Bad?
I would say more grotesque, trashier. I love that this movie is just, if you think back to stuff from the 90s like Boogie Nights and Pulp Fiction, the way that those filmmakers were able to just sort of compile all of these niche interests of theirs into a really interesting subplot, or a really interesting plot.
Your time is up, by the way.
Oh, well, can I continue though?
Yeah, go. Continue.
I just think that this movie is so exciting for it. Like every 5 seconds, it's making some sort of weird, crazy, over-the-top aesthetic choice, and just feels like a whole bunch of weird little interests that its filmmaker has kind of like built up and compiled in her head over the years, and is now sort of putting them on screen. And that, like, it's kind of a crime thriller, it's kind of a romance, it's kind of this like surreal family drama, it's also kind of a Cronenberg body horror movie. It doesn't always work, but the entire time you're just sort of thrilled that, like, I'm glad someone's going for it like this woman is.
The thing that interests me about this film, I haven't seen it yet, is Kristen Stewart, who continues, I think, to make very interesting decisions. She made a lot of money early in her career in these Twilight films, and somewhat similarly, I think, to Daniel Radcliffe, who made a ton of money playing Harry Potter. She has decided, all right, I'm going to do the kind of films I want to do. I'm an adult now, and I'm making the movies I want to make, and that doesn't mean franchise films. It doesn't mean big budget Hollywood stuff. She made like one underwater kind of shark movie or something like that.
Yeah, I remember
a couple
that.
years ago. But other than that, it feels like everything Kristen Stewart picks is a script where she's like, this is going to challenge me. This is an interesting movie. This is not an obvious selection, and she doesn't want to be a part of big Hollywood blockbuster kind of stuff. She wants to do things that are a little more unusual.
Yeah, it's really if you're looking for like a cool punk, nasty, sort of like punch to the face noir movie, definitely go see it. All
Okay.
right, what's your last one?
All right, my last one is Problemista.
Okay.
This is from the mind of a former Saturday Night Live writer named Jose Torres, he is the writer, producer, director, and star of this film. It's possible he bit off more than he could chew, taking on all those different roles.
He's no modern day Orson Welles.
No, he's not but this is a really, really interesting film. It's about a Central American immigrant living in New York, desperate for a green card, wants to stay, doesn't want to get caught up in having to go back to his home country, and the only way he can stay is to find someone to sponsor him, an employer to sponsor him. He ends up connecting with Tilda Swinton, who plays an art critic who is truly certifiably insane. She's a crazy person, but he has to latch onto her because she is his only chance to stay in the country. It is a really humorous and funny film about a very human condition, and it navigates through the maze of immigration and how difficult it is. It has a lot to say while also being very amusing. I think it's I don't want to go so far as to say it's an important film. That's heavy because this is a very funny movie, but I think it is a worthwhile film to see. And I think Torres is the kind of talent that we should pay attention to. This is his first effort as a director, writer, producer, and star. And he is absolutely worth paying attention to in the future because this is a guy who I think is going to be someone to watch. If this is what he can do first time out, I am really on board for what he's going to do second, third, fifth film down the line.
Well, that's a great pick, and it sounds like with him and Rose Glass that directed Love Lives Bleeding, hopefully we're giving some spotlight to like some cool up and coming artists. Jason, you won this round. You were able to do this stuff in 60 seconds. I was not because I talked too much. But this has been fun. We will have you back in the coming weeks.
We got a little Kong and Godzilla coming up.
Oh, right. Yeah. Hooray, everyone. We're getting Godzilla again. But after that we got Civil War. We got Challengers.
I'm looking forward to Challengers.
We got a sexy tennis
the
movie.
Fall Guy. We got
Ryan Gosling. It's going to be a fun spring at the movies.
Yeah, it's about to be some really good movies I think come into theaters.
Well, until then, we will see you at the movies.